This podcast is sponsored by St. Francis Regional Medical Center in Shakopee. St. Francis is committed to caring for our community. As navigating the COVID-19 pandemic becomes our new normal, St. Francis remains open for emergency, urgent, and elective care. Learn more about the hospital's enhanced safety measures at stfrancis-shakopee.com/safecare. Hi, and welcome to the Shakopee Chamber Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by our friends at St. Francis Regional Medical Center here in Shakopee. St. Francis is committed to caring for our community. As we navigate the COVID-19 pandemic and that becomes our new normal, St. Francis remains open for emergency, urgent, and elective care. You can learn more about the hospital's enhanced safety measures at stfrancis-shakopee.com/safecare. So we want to thank everyone who came out and joined us at our Shakopee Golf Tournament yesterday. We are taping this episode of the podcast on the 29th, just the day after, and it was a great day. I want to thank the SMSC for their generous donation and their team at the Meadows for making the golf tournament just a huge success and a smooth day. And obviously, Mother Nature was very kind to us as well, knocking on wood for that. I want to thank our amazing sponsors. People, with the pandemic, we didn't know if we were going to be able to hold our golf tournament. We had just a little over 3 weeks to pull this thing together. So that meant a lot of outbound phone calls from the chamber staff to ask our returning sponsors and participants to come back this year. And everyone just responded so favorably and generously. So we want to thank everyone for that. We added a new twist this year with the addition of some play-by-play commentary on the first tee box with Logan from Sabres Live. And he's a voice you'll start to hear more of, assuming we have some sort of in-person school this year and sports can happen. So stay tuned for that. He and his team are going to do a great job for us whenever we can have a sports season. And on to another great day this week with our guest who, along with his team, works hard every day to make Shakopee a good and safe day. This week, we are excited to welcome the Chief of Police, Chief Jeff Tate. He has been a friend of the chamber for many years. He replaced his predecessor as a chamber board member upon his becoming chief, and he and his team are always great partners for us here at the chamber. And we ask a lot of them, from Farmers Market to Rhythm on the Rails and Holiday Fest. We certainly couldn't do our job without him and his team, and that is for sure. So Chief, welcome, and thanks for accepting our invitation today.
Morning, Angie. Nice to see you again.
Well, it's good to see you, even if it is via the Zoom.
Yes.
The Zoom. We're going to cover some big things today, Chief, but before we go deep, I want to talk to you about your leadership and your initiative as it relates to things like ordinances. I know within the last year, you and your team wrote and implemented an ordinance to combat credit card fraud here in our community. And even though I was on the other side of the table having some questions about that ordinance, you proved us all wrong, and you knew what was best for us, and we appreciate that. But tell our listeners more about that ordinance and what the outcome was.
Sure. Well, it's just over a year old now. I think we implemented that in June of 2019. And while we knew there would be opposition to that, I do think, and I think you would appreciate too, the process that undertook. I mean,
Absolutely.
We invited every single stakeholder to participate in the drafting of that. And you'll remember the original ordinance that came out and what it actually ended up in front of City Council was quite different and from the original. And that, I think, speaks a lot to the process and the input. We were all listening and took that input in and modified it to make it as palatable as we could. Yeah. What the ordinance does, just really quickly, it combats certain types of gift card fraud. MasterCard, Visa, American Express gift cards that are loadable third-party gift cards. The ordinance prohibits any sale of these at a kiosk.
Sure.
And self-checkout kiosk. And if anybody goes to check that out and buys it with a credit card, they do have to show an ID, government-issued ID, that matches the name on the credit card. Yeah. And anecdotally, it's been a year. we've had one incident.
Wow.
In 1 year. And that really wasn't even the retailer's fault. We had an individual steal gift cards from another store and bring them in. And it was kind of a goofy deal that we had never anticipated that. But we've all but eliminated that.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of the process, and I'm proud of the way that afterwards we incorporated the high school, the CAPS program, and a student there went and surveyed all the impacted businesses post-incident about 8 months after. And because we wanted to see, was it working, and what was the feel in the community for it, the business community for it. And
what did you find out?
The feedback was really good. For the most part, everybody was on board and thought it was a good thing. Some stores did not reply. They wanted to work up the chain, and so forth.
Sure.
And I get that. But even Monday, I had a loss prevention person joking with me about this. He said, look, they probably wouldn't want me to tell you this, but all the times I see people come to the self-checkout and they're not able to do it and they walk right out. So I think it's had an impact. COVID has impacted how it's going to look down the road.
Sure.
We've had at least 24 police agencies request a copy of our ordinance.
Oh, wow.
And our data, supporting it. Then COVID hit. So now is not the right time to move forward with something like this. But I do think in the future we're going to see hopefully some more of this, and maybe some legislation that impacts how some of this is dealt with. So,
well, congratulations to you and your team. I mean, that really is forward thinking. And to your point earlier, I do have to compliment you on the process. And what I appreciated is that you did bring in the retailers, and you brought in the retail association, and you asked the questions, and you and your team, and it wasn't just you taking notes. I mean, you brought in the investigators who handle all of this, and they shared their workload and victim stories. And it was very enlightening for me. And you guys won an award for this. Is that right?
We did. We were just recently. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. We just recently were given a Science and Innovation and Law Enforcement Award for that ordinance by the FBI National Academy Associates. So we're hoping they got a virtual conference here at the start of September, and we hope that we'll get that award that first week of September. But they have announced that we'll get that, and we have some agencies throughout the country now that are looking at the ordinance too. So
congratulations. I love it.
We'll see where it goes.
Well, congratulations. I've always said when I started my job here, and you start to realize all of the great innovation that does exist in our community so many businesses out in the industrial park. I mean, Imagine Print started in a garage, Kennard Aerospace. And I always said I was going to write a book called Who Knew, and talk about all the great things that happen in Shakopee. And I think if you and your team keep working the way you do, we're going to have a whole chapter on the innovation that came out of your department, because this isn't the first ordinance that you and your team have brought forth and impacted change so positively. So kudos to you guys. Now, you also, since we're bragging about you, and there's not enough good police news lately, and we'll get to that a little bit. You guys also, a couple of years ago, if I remember, you won a National Community Policing Award as well, right?
Yep. The International Association of Police of Chiefs of Police gave us their Excellence in Community Policing Award. That was probably 4 or 5 years ago. And then
time flies.
2 years ago, time flies. 2 years ago, I'm looking over your shoulder at the tunnel painting. Yep. And I've got mine right here in my office too. And that was a big part of that someone went into that award. And we also got their Victim Services Award 2 years ago. So we're very, very fortunate that our hard work is being recognized. And community policing has always been our core philosophy at this police department, at least the 22 years I've been here.
22 years. Wow. That's a whole career right there, Jeff. Thank you. So now I just read in the Shakopee Valley News that law enforcement is taking dispatch calls off of the air. Now, I read the article and they quoted Sheriff Hennon, but if I'm correct, 911 goes to the county and gets dispatched for police too. So talk to us about this change and how your department's feeling about it and what you expect to see from it.
And I think the initial reaction is, well, wait a minute, what are they doing? They're taking that off, and what are they hiding? Yeah. The reality is everything is still recorded, and times have changed a little bit. I do support this. I want to state that right off the get-go here.
Mhm.
And we have been over the course of a few years now implementing radio upgrades that will allow for the encryption, and by the spring of next year, we'll be ready to go live.
Cool.
I think people got to understand a couple things. You know, it used to be you had to have a big scanner, and every once in a while you'd pull somebody over, you know, on a burglary, and they'd have a big scanner in, you know, in their car. Now you can do it on your cell phone.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, there are people out there listening to radio traffic that are doing nefarious things in the community, and that's part of it. The other part of it is the privacy.
Yeah.
Look, our number one medical is a mental health call. Wow. And it's not even close. It's been that way for years. Mm-hmm. And there's information that's going out over the air that you wouldn't want said about you over the airwaves.
Yeah.
And having people listening to on their cell phones. So there's also information that officers and updates on calls that officers are getting on their computer as they're driving, but I don't want them looking at their computer while they're driving. I want them driving.
Yeah.
So there'll be, you know, the encryption will allow them to get some real-time information, maybe aired over, and assist them in their thinking
like
process.
In a headset or
just over the air, over the speaker.
Oh, okay, because it won't be
while they're driving. Yep.
It'll be private. That's much better.
Yep, things like that will help. And you see in a lot of places going to this, and it's just, I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Everything is still recorded and subject to data requests and so forth. So
yeah.
I understand that, you know, if you're a newspaper writer and you want to be right there, the importance of speed and being the first to cover something. But you're going to also know that something's going on in town too, and still have that ability to get that information.
Yeah. Well, you know, and in this day and age, and this is just purely my opinion, right? It's not sanctioned by anyone but me. A little less real-time news of all the bad stuff is okay with me. And you know, you guys are the ultimate workforce that does their job in a fishbowl. I mean, I sometimes think the chamber's a fishbowl. You guys are the ultimate fishbowl, but then to have it, you know, real time on everybody's phone, the good guys and the bad guys, is just, that's too much. So yeah, I read the article and I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. I wonder how the chief feels about it. But yeah, I mean, you also bring up a good point in this day and age. You don't want it to appear that you're trying to hide anything, because that is not that would be incredibly tone deaf in light of everything. And we're going to segue right into that, Jeff. You know, in May, we all witnessed the murder of George Floyd. I love all your cops going by.
Yeah, they're coming in the
That's awesome. We're gonna have to get you one of those light up on the air signs. Yeah. Don't move your camera. It looks great. And it brought a little levity to this subject. But in May, we all witnessed the murder of George Floyd, and we all saw that video way too many times. And that moment in our nation's history has really forever changed us and changed everything about how all of us move through the day. So obviously it's led to endless calls for police reform and months of protests. And there's way too much for us to unpack in this topic that, you know, we would need to do 1,000 hours of this podcast and bring in professionals far greater and smarter than us. But let's start with what was happening in Shakopee during the protests in Minneapolis, and how did our department respond? What were you expecting here? Were you on call? Walk us through those days and weeks.
My phone never stopped ringing.
I bet.
Those days. There were a lot of rumors.
Mm-hmm.
There was Shakopee was not immune from the Twin Cities metro areas, specifically the South Metro. Okay. Whether it was Bloomington, a lot of rumors in Burnsville that things were going to happen, and they were going to take protests to the suburbs. Mm-hmm. We made a decision early on regionally as Scott County Chiefs that we were going to keep our folks home. For the most part here. We were going to, it was important for us to be visible, we felt. Parking lots of businesses, whether it's a Target, a Walmart, those types of things. Anytime Target shut down early, oh my gosh, what's going to happen in Shakopee? So everybody was, let's face it, on edge, that during that time. And my goodness, the number of calls that we got for people that don't have a license plate on their car.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was nonstop. I mean, it was one right after another. Yeah. And you're like, really? I mean, because it's hard if you just bought a new car to get your plates right now, right? In a timely manner. So there were just a lot of people driving around with no plates that had nothing to do with any type of protest, but the calls.
So did you have to stop all of them? I mean, did your department look into it?
No, we, absent any type of real information, we, tried to be a calming force.
Yeah.
And we were ready more for if Bloomington asked for assistance, or Burnsville or Egan with the outlet mall, those types of things was the role that we played.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to make sure we were taking care of the home front first.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The rumor mill was crazy. Even where we live, I mean, like the moms groups in our community were sending them out to Facebook. Like, I just saw this on Twitter. And I mean, everyone was on edge. You felt like the world was coming to an end, right? And certainly what we were seeing on the news of Minneapolis burning, and I never thought it was, we were all on edge. So let's talk about what crime looks like now in Shakopee, mid COVID and mid George Floyd. Is it up? Is it down? Is it different?
Different with a capital D.
Tell us more about that.
Well, I think in any other year, we'd be spiking the football that, hey, look, we are on track to have the single lowest crime rate we've ever had in the history of Shakopee. I mean, it's down significantly. There's some things, there's blips here and there, like catalytic converter theft will have, a spike here or there. Or in June, I know it impacted some businesses here in Shakopee. We had the unemployment fraud scam that went through. We had a couple weeks of that. So you get blips like that, but for the most part, crime is down significantly. Arrests are down significantly. And I attribute a lot of that to absence of victims. We're just not out in the community as much.
Oh, okay.
There's not as many people out there. And when you don't have Valley Fair, when you don't have the crowds at Canterbury, the concerts at Canterbury, Mystic has been shut down for, a good portion of the COVID. And it's interesting that, we keep track of our arrests and where they're from. Yeah. And you look at it's about close to 70% of the folks that we book in the Scott County Jail are not from here.
Wow. And that is an incredibly high number.
Yeah. And I think it was May. Was the first time ever we've been looking at where we actually arrested more Shakopee people than people from out of the community. Scott County. Yeah. So I think that tells you, I mean, as much as, I say as much as we brag and love our entertainment industry, it does have an impact on our services and just the sheer volume of the people that come in. So I think not having that, I mean, last week would have been, I believe, Twin Cities Summer Jam. I mean, we'd have been out there in the heat, nonstop, and you don't have that. So,
and don't forget the big concert last week would have been the kickoff of Rhythm as well. Yeah. So
of course you're going to get nothing but nice Wednesdays, perfect weather the rest of the way now.
I'm not taunting Mother Nature. I may almost commented a couple of times yesterday, but I held back.
Yeah.
Okay. So, with all of this, Jeff, so, because we still do hear that, violent crime is up, more thefts, and, not that we're wanting that to happen in Shakopee, but I have to go on record since we are recording this. I do wish Valley Fair was open. I do wish Canterbury was at capacity. So not that we want crime to go up, but I feel like the longer business is down and the longer this goes on, that and maybe I'm wrong, that we'll start to see truly what we're hearing about crimes increasing start to happen as people get frustrated and people are unemployed for long times and people get desperate. I mean, is that me being a over worried, suburban mom, or is that a thing?
Maybe a little bit of both. I think there are some thefts that are happening at retail that are definitely a little more bold now. When they see, what's happening on, the news, and okay, now I can do that at the Shakopee location. Or I think there's
TVs are free.
There's a little more boldness there.
Okay.
And for the I'm with you. I want to see all our entertainment, venues going. I mean, that's what makes our job exciting too. Yeah. And I think though, what we're seeing, and we expected actually to see this a little sooner, But with COVID, you see the mental health, the strain, the addiction, the alcohol sales are through the roof.
Yeah.
And so we have had our blips there where it's been like nothing but mental health calls all day long.
Yeah.
So domestics, we expected to see an increase in our domestic abuse calls.
And have you?
It's depends. I think recently we've seen a few more than what we've seen in March or April. So those are the things that I anticipate as this grinds on. It's having an impact on all of us. It has an impact on us.
For sure.
For sure.
How has your department changed the way they operate with all that's going on?
Initially, we went to a modified schedule, so we didn't have so many people in and out. But I mean, we were here every day, and we had to respond to calls for service. A lot of unfortunately, we're having to take a lot of them over the phone now. We still don't want people to come into the office if they don't have to. So there's, we changed how we do vehicle releases for a while. Things like that and how we respond to medicals is different. I hope it's not a permanent thing because I do value that one-on-one interaction that I don't think you get over, taking a theft report over a phone call.
Yeah.
I think we miss something when we do that. So
I think all industries miss something without the face-to-face. I mean, I think there's a lot of talk about how a lot of corporations are made, work from home may be the new thing because they're realizing, we don't need to pay for all this overhead. This is working, but it's the people interaction. And I noticed that yesterday after our golf tournament, even with our small team here, bringing people back in the office, the energy, the collaboration. And, if I need to call the police and file a report, I kind of want somebody to come out and take the report and feel bad for me. Give me that empathy right there.
And that's always been our style.
Yeah.
Is to have that one-on-one be accessible to the community. So
Well, speaking of accessible to the community, there have been numerous calls for defunding the police nationwide. And there seems to be some confusion about what that means. It's panic from, oh my God, they're going to just eliminate police departments and it's going to be chaos. But walk us through what that would look like. And I'd love your opinion, Jeff. If they do redirect these funds, where do you think they'd be best used?
Well, this is a big issue, big topic. And look, for the most part, any type of defunding of a police department is going to mean less personnel. I mean, we don't have a lot of discretionary spending. So thankfully, that's not going to, there hasn't been any talk of that here. In fact, it's been the opposite. And I do want to take just 1 second to thank everybody, the business community, everybody that owns a restaurant, I swear, has dropped some type of food off at some point. The community as a whole, the cards, the food, the letters, the emails, we have had overwhelming support from this community, and it has meant the world to our officers. And thank you to everybody that's done that. And, no little small thank you is gone unnoticed or not appreciated. So it's why we love Shakopee. People understand the culture here is different than Minneapolis for the most part. Now there are still some, usually it's the younger ones that have a few words for you if you walk into Quick Trip or something like that, but overwhelming support. Yeah. But when you talk about, I think maybe let me backtrack a little bit. When we are going through a hiring process right now. We had a retirement and an individual leave for another organization. Our first round interviews were the week after Memorial week. So right in the meat grinder of all of this. We've lost, the defunding to me is an issue for a lot of them, but I think the problem you're going to see, especially in the big cities, who's going to want to work there?
Yeah.
Who's going to want to come into this profession? We have lost 2 of our top 5 candidates already, withdrew, 2 people we would have hired. Angie, these are 2 people that would have brought some diversity to our force and a lot of life experience. We're excited about these people, and both of them cited the current political climate as the reason they don't want to do it. So we're in trouble as an industry, and everybody's having problems hiring right now. I get that, but we are having we're going to have massive problems recruiting and retaining individuals in this career. This is essential work. We need police officers. We need to maintain some order, some rule of law, and to function. And we've seen that. And we have to have good people, regardless if you like your police department or you want that department to change. Agencies don't change without quality people. And you can have all the policies in place that you want. If you don't have quality people dedicated to a life of service, driven people, we're going to be in trouble. And that worries me moving forward, especially for the bigger cities. I don't know how they're going to recruit people in Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's a topic that is so huge and so charged, and I don't think anybody would disagree that there needs to be some reform, that there needs to be change. I mean, we're broken. We are broken, and we need to fix it. And we've got a lot of work to do as a nation. It's I go back and forth. I wish money was I don't want my taxes to go up, but I do think more money could be spent on programs that would help everybody, would help the police be better at their job, help the police do their job better, help the police deal with the change, with overcoming racism, with all of it. I mean, it's a huge topic, and again, more time than we have.
Yeah. But to that point briefly, I mean, law enforcement was never configured to be the first step for social services for homeless, for addiction, for mental health. But we are. I mean, when you look at it right now, we are filling the gaps for society that's basically walked away from its social safety net the last 40 years. And we can't blame all of America's social ills on the police. There are, if anything comes out of this, if it wakes America up from its lethargy and realizes that, we have major issues of intergenerational poverty, mental health, and we can start looking at those issues and devoting some resources to them, then some good will have come out of this. Because we shouldn't have to. There's a lot of stuff that they're fair questions, they're good questions. They're questions law enforcement's been asking for years. Are these really calls that police officers should be going to?
Yeah, and many would argue not without the right training, and you don't have that. You're not a mental health professional. Yeah, I mean, let's hope you're right, Jeff. I mean, from your lips, America needs to wake up out of our lethargy. We got some real problems we have swept under the rug for far too long. It's time to clean it up. All right, I'm going to bring this back to levity. I can feel my shoulders tensing up, and this. I want everyone to know this isn't a topic that the chamber's ignoring or sweeping over. You and I, Chief Tate and Angie from the chamber, are not the ones with the answers. We're not the experts, and we will be bringing those guests onto this podcast. And we may ask you back, Jeff, to be part of a panel presentation. And this, I think, is a conversation we're going to be having for many, many years to come. So speaking of things to come, you guys are doing Nite to Unite next week, and a lot of departments are kicking that down the road. Talk to me about what your motivation was on that.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, we understand that, first and foremost, it's safety driven, and current guidelines allow for this to happen in August. We are one of the only ones I'm aware of that's still having it next week. So we knew most of agencies are punting it down to October. Well, what does October give us? There's going to be school on virtual or otherwise. It's a school night. Who knows what sports will be like? There's less daylight, who knows about the fall wave. So we didn't see any advantage to going to October. And then, to what we've just been talking about, we've always wanted to be an accessible police department. And I think now more than ever, we need to be out there. And it's going to look different. There's no question about it. From wearing masks. Yep. And we want people to socially distance. We're not encouraging any potlucks or anything like that that you typically see. It breaks our heart, but a lot of the senior communities that we're always so excited to go to, and they have the best desserts. will not. We won't be able
You're
to go.
just reinforcing that stereotype. You know that.
Yeah,
right?
I proudly though. Trust me. There's some really.
I meant
good
of the cops liking sweets.
Yes. Well, yes. I'm the worst person with my sweet tooth, but yeah, kids won't be able to climb through the squad cars and things like that. But for those people that do want to have a conversation or do want to get together in smaller numbers, and again, it'll look and feel different. I just don't think you can hide under the thunder blanket and wait for things to go. We had a picnic with the police a couple of weeks ago. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. I can't wait to do it again next year. And now is the time, like I said, to be out there engaging the public.
Well, and you
can do it safely.
Yeah, and you just made a really good point. The conversations need to have a platform to happen. And if the police can be having conversations, and I'm guessing some of them aren't easy and tough, but necessary, let's get face to face and do it. I applaud you and your department for doing that and being willing to do that.
Yeah, and have them face to face.
Huge.
Not on social media.
Yeah.
I think that's where solutions happen.
Oh, no solutions have come out of social media. I can't even look at it anymore. It drives me crazy. So one last question, since you brought it up at Nite Tonight, how, the mask mandate rolled out. We got 76,000 masks delivered to our chamber yesterday, and all of my chamber partners in Scott County are handing them out to businesses today, which by the time people hear this, it'll be all over. But how is your department going to enforce this mandate? Because that seems to be the big question. If I don't wear it, am I going to jail? What's going to happen?
Well, and there are extremely passionate people on both sides. Both sides of this. We are encouraging people, first and foremost, not to call us if they see somebody wearing a mask.
Or not wearing a mask.
Not wearing a mask, no. And we've talked to several retailers in town, that do large volumes and gone over their plans. They've kind of shared with us what their game plan is. And we agree with that. And please, if you do see somebody, as much as it may bother you that they're not wearing a mask, please don't approach them. It just seems like nothing good comes out of those conversations except yelling and, in some cases around the country, violence.
Oh, yeah.
And I just give
them videotape for all to see.
Just give them extra space and go about your business. And that's what we're asking the public to do. We're strictly in an education phase, and the last thing we ever want to do here is write a ticket for that.
Yeah. And you're right. It's so charged. But all right, Jeff, we have covered a lot in our time today. And there's so much more that needs to be discussed and will be discussed. And we'll invite you, as well as people far more versed in facilitating those necessary discussions. So stay tuned for that. I do want to thank you for your time today and for joining us. But mostly, I want to thank our sponsor who makes this podcast possible. And that is St. Francis Regional Medical Center. Our safety, like your departments, Jeff, our safety is their top priority at St. Francis, and enhanced safety measures are in place while you're provided with quality care close to home. And as always, you can learn more about their enhanced safety measures at stfrancis-shakopee.com/safecare. Thank you, Chief Tate. Thanks for all you and your team do. Stay safe and be well.
Thank you.
This podcast was sponsored by St. Francis Regional Medical Center in Shakopee. Your safety is the top priority at St. Francis, and enhanced safety measures are in place while you're provided with quality care close to home. Learn more about the enhanced safety measures at stfrancis-shakopee.com/safecare.